I felt like it was a Hollywood movie.
He was a wealthy executive and doting dad.
He was very loving and concerned about his kids.
In the midst of a nasty divorce with a bitter ex.
He just said that his wife was putting him through so much.
But soon he bounced back. A new life with a gorgeous new fiancée. And that's when it started. He felt threatened.
He says, "I'm afraid for my life."
Haunted.
I said, "You're being melodramatic." And he said, "No, this is really happening."
Ambushed from inside his $1 million dream house.
Suddenly he started to scream.
Shot to death. A crime of passion, said police.
Somebody wanted this man dead very, very badly.
The question was, who? His ex?
She was losing everything.
Or someone else? The arrest was startling.
Look at Ed.
The strategy in the courtroom, that was the biggest surprise of all.
He's overweight, out of shape.
Too fat, too sick.
Yes.
Was this suspect too fat to kill?
Good evening and welcome to Dateline. I'm Ann Curry. A devoted father gunned down in his own home by someone on the stairs. It was a crime that made national news because of its unusual defense. The suspect argued he was simply too obese to carry out the killing. Would that argument sway the jury? Here's Dennis Murphy.
The world of pills, prescription medicines, pharmaceuticals is where he'd made it big.
He was Moses. He was walking on water. Everybody loved him.
Paul Dunsack seemed to go straight from a college intern job behind the druggist counter to the big money lifestyle of a pharmaceutical executive. On the way up, he struck so many bosses as a natural at figuring innovative ways to make money out of medicine.
He could do almost anything.
And for years, this hard-charging golden boy seemed to have all the perks and bennies an executive could want. Mid-six figures paycheck, the $1 million house in a good suburb, the wife and kids. And then, just like that, it all slipped away from him. And there wasn't a pill on the shelf to reverse the dizzying decline. By the end of 2003, after 4 years of marriage and 2 kids, Paul and Stacy were over and out, heading for divorce. The father-in-law says the soured business deals had nothing to do with his daughter's marriage going bust. Ed 8 says Paul Dunsack had come to resent Stacy, who was suffering from an illness that had paralyzed her face.
Apparently he wanted to be rid of her after she got disfigured.
He didn't like the way she looked?
He didn't, no, she wasn't a trophy bride no more.
Now, as Paul told it was Stacy who was the problem. He told friends that she was abusing prescription drugs. Well, she denied it and allegedly told her father that her husband was selling those drugs on the black market. Ed 8 says he alerted the authorities, who found no evidence of wrongdoing. But the father-in-law wasn't done. Ed 8's next accused Dunsack of giving kickbacks to employees of a pharmaceutical giant. He'd whistleblown his son-in-law to Paul's own superiors. The result of the father-in-law and estranged wife's toxic campaign was a career killer for Paul Dunsack. He lost his biggest client, and that, says his divorce attorney, Dominic Tomaio, all but ruined Dunsack.
Because the pharmaceutical industry is a small, tight-knit industry in the training field, that he felt that he was going to be, and was in fact, blacklisted through the other pharmaceutical companies.
So Paul Dunsack, the man who once pulled down $500,000 plus a year as a pharmaceutical executive, was now out the door. Back to square one, working behind the counter of a local drugstore where he made less than $100,000 a year. By the beginning of 2004, Paul Dunsack was not only getting divorced, he was also getting depressed. A few saw Paul struggling with dark thoughts, very dark. At one point, he called his brother to say he was putting his affairs in order.
He goes, "I fear my life. I truly, truly do."
Even paranoids are right some of the time. Paul, meanwhile, seemed to be getting his groove back. He'd managed to work his way from the drugstore counter back into his old environment as a pharmaceutical executive with Medco. He also had a girlfriend, a serious new woman in his life, who was going to move in with him in that nice but all too lonely house in Ramsey, New Jersey. While Paul was talking marriage, the former Mrs. Dunsack's life was in freefall, money trouble. She hadn't found work after the divorce. She'd been sickly with various complaints and now had fallen behind on bank payments for her home. John Dunsack says the way his brother saw it, Stacy had only one option: to move in with her parents, Ed and Dottie Yates, down in Florida. But the child custody arrangement wouldn't allow that.
Every time that Stacy had the kids, my brother's always concerned that she would take them out of state.
And behind that fear of losing his kids was an even darker threat. Paul shared it with his friend Nancy Bagley one afternoon as their kids swam in his backyard. He said that earlier that summer his pool had been sabotaged, its heater cranked up to a piping 100 degrees. He was convinced it was no accident.
He says, "I'm afraid for my life." And I remember looking at the other mom, and we were just frozen. I mean, we really were.
Pretty soon, word was getting around with his new business associates that Paul Dunsack was a man looking over his shoulder. Co-worker Janie Benorth, who used the same daycare as Paul, could not fathom why he was so hush-hush about anyone learning who his new employer was. Downright weird.
Please do not notice me if you ever see me over at the daycare. I don't want anybody to know where I'm working.
But 3 weeks later, she ran into him at that daycare and innocently said hello. Back at the office, he went nuts on her.
And very, very, very arrogantly and very mad, just pointed his finger at me and said, "I thought we had this conversation. I thought I told you never to talk to me outside of this office." I mean, to the point that I was very scared.
Even his good friend Michael Hertz thought Paul was starting to lose it. After all, the divorce and custody issue had been settled. He had no reason to fear his ex.
I said, "Paul, really, I think you're being a little melodramatic."
You think the guy's paranoid?
Absolutely. And he said, "No, this is really happening. I know nobody believes me."
So with all this drama going on, when Stacy took the kids for vacation the second week in August of 2006, Paul was all but convinced he'd never see them again. Michael, the best friend, tried to cheer him up, changing the subject to the exciting new chapter. His fiancée would be moving in with him in a few days. In fact, Paul was on his cell phone with her as he pulled into his driveway after work on Wednesday, August 23rd. As the fiancés chatted, he remarked about an empty hamburger wrapper left lying on the floor. Then he took her to task for leaving the central air conditioner going full blast.
And Paul was being Paul and made a crack. He goes, "Can't believe you left the freaking air conditioner on." She goes, "No, I didn't."
That's when she heard Paul scream and the line go dead. His months of growing fear had been validated by at least 7 gunshots at close range. He never had a chance to tell all his doubters, "I told you so."